Hello YouTube fans, it's Dr. Matthew Johnson, and it's been a while, right? It's Saturday, June 3rd, 2017, 12:15 in the afternoon, and I'm in Puyallup, Washington right now. Just wanted to let you know that it's been about a month since the conference, and I, in all fairness, warned everybody way ahead of time that a poop storm was coming. I told everybody that when I revealed the great reveal about the Exodus, that it was going to make the portal with Adam Davies and John Carlson look like kindergarten, and it has. And so as a result of the 4-part YouTube video series, if you just scroll down below this one and watch part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, you'll get all the information you need. There's even more information in the book. So anyway, apparently the book has caused some controversy. I would, at this point in time, by the way, like to thank the old schoolers and the trolls and the haters for all the controversy, because you have jacked up my book sales. So thank you. I appreciate that very much. Okay, so anyway, there's a foreword here by Bob Gimlin, and a lot of controversy surrounds that. And so far the score is they put out 2 videos, I put out none. So this is the only video I intend to put out unless I'm forced to put out another one. I hope the issue can be put to rest after I'm allowed to share my side of the story, because a coin does have 2 sides. So you've heard their side, you've watched 2 of their videos, you get to watch one of mine. Okay? So here we go. Cynthia's filming me. She's going to pass the camera to me, and we're going to take it from here. Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, there is my Team Squatching USA Facebook group, and posted in the Facebook group is a letter written by Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones. Now, this is Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones right there on the right. In the middle is Bob Gimlin, on the left is me. And we took this picture after we met on July 7th for lunch, and we had about a 2-hour meeting. So anyway, that shows that we were all together, and we actually did meet at Sherry's in Yakima. And then Kevin penned this letter. So we're just going to read through it together, just so you know I'm not making stuff up, because a lot of people like to lie and say that I make stuff up. Okay, so referring to Gimlin's foreword to Dr. Matthew Johnson's book. After a long absence, I'm rejoining Facebook temporarily because it has been brought to my attention that a rumor has been started. By the way, the word rumor is synonymous with the word lie, and it is used by people who lack the moral courage to confront the author of the lie with the truth, and that the author of the lie is a liar. So you, Jeff, and there's been a lot more involved than Jeff, by the way, in all fairness to Jeff, let me rephrase. A lie has been started about the foreword attributed to Bob Gimlin in Dr. Johnson's new book. Last year, Mr. Gimlin and I were asked by Dr. Johnson to pen forewords to his upcoming book. At Dr. Johnson's request, I arranged a lunch meeting between the 3 of us at Sherry's restaurant in Yakima, where Dr. Johnson updated Mr. Gimlin and I on his experience and what he would be revealing in his book and at the upcoming conference. Both Mr. Gimlin and I agreed to submit to Dr. Johnson's request. So right there you have it from Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones. Now we all met in Yakima at Sherry's, and And I told Bob Gimlin about everything that was going to be in the book, and I told him about what was going to be at the conference. So, you know, what they're floating out there is he didn't know about the content of the book and didn't know what I would be sharing with everybody else. Appears to not be accurate. Okay, I personally, and if you get the chance to speak to Mr. Gimlin, feel free to get the confirmation on the matter. I personally assisted Mr. Gimlin in preparing his submission. So Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones is saying that he personally assisted Mr. Gimlin in preparing his submission, or the foreword for my book, by driving the 60 some odd miles to meet him in Yakima, assist with the draft, drive back home to input his draft, Bob Gimlin's draft, not Matt Johnson's draft, Bob Gimlin's draft, into my computer, print it out, drove back to Yakima to have him review and approve. And after a few suggested changes, was asked by Mr. Gimlin if I would please make the changes and get the submission back to Dr. Johnson in time to facilitate his publication deadline. Are you reading that, ladies and gentlemen? Right there. There's your answer. I'm not lying. I didn't write his foreword. Okay? So, now, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones ends his letter by saying, lies need to be nipped in the bud at the earliest opportunity. I will respond to questions, references this matter, and the matter of Mr. Gimlin's absence from the conference. And I can give my permission, if Dr. Johnson will agree, to post, for my post to be released beyond the limits of this forum. Thank you for your attention. Kevin B. Jones, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army, retired. Right there. Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones met with Bob and I, July 7th, 2016, Sherry's Restaurant. Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones, okay, right there, assisted Bob Gimlin. Drove to his house. Bob dictated to him. He wrote it down. He drove back to his house, typed it up, drove 60 odd miles back to Bob's house, read it to him, make some last minute changes, and then Bob told him to get it to my book. And as we read, I informed Bob Gimlin and Kevin about everything that occurred. Now, let's look at the foreword that most of you haven't read because most of you haven't bought my book. Foreword by Bob Gimlin. In October of 1967, Roger Patterson and I ventured to Northern California in the hope of finding fresh footprints reportedly left by Bigfoot forest person, collecting film footage of the area to add to the footage Roger had already collected for a documentary he was planning on putting together. Our greatest hope was to come back with cast of the reported prints, or even better, finding tracks of our own to cast. We both knew that we were facing a task which was next to impossible. However, the reports of recent activity in the area was motivation enough to warrant the strip. Now, this is of a personal nature coming from the mind of Bob Gimlin. I didn't know what his hopes were, what he thought was possible, impossible, what their game plan was. How could I pen that if I authored his foreword? Think these things through, ladies and gentlemen. To our surprise, we actually filmed a Bigfoot in Bluff Creek area walking away from us. The rest is history. Although the film has undergone quite a bit of scrutiny over the decades, I can assure you that it's legitimate. It's the real deal. My life has never been the same. For over 30 years, the people around Yakima made my life a living hell. Crank phone calls and visits to my house at all times of the day and night, inviting me out to hunt for Bigfoot. They even went as far as to harass my wife at work. at the workplace, making comments about crazy old Bob. It all made me wish it never happened. How did I author that? How did I write that? How did I make that up? I don't know about Bob's personal life. I don't know about the crap he went through after, they filmed Patty in 1967. Don't say I authored this foreword. Lieutenant Kevin Colonel Jones clearly said that he drove 60-odd miles to Bob's house. Bob dictated it. He drove back home, typed it up, drove the other 60-plus miles back to Bob's home. Bob gave him final authorization and asked him to pass it on to me. Okay, that's what happened. Those are the facts. This foreword is too personal and penned by the mind of Bob Gimlin, not Matt Johnson. I don't know that stuff about Bob. I don't know what he encountered after his experience and what his wife went through. Give me a break. It wasn't until 2003 at the Bluff Creek Conference when things really began to change for the better. Surrounded by the likes of John Green, Dmitry Banov, Igor Borstev, John Bindernagel, Jimmy Chilcutt, and a host of other academics and authors, not to mention an audience made up of witnesses, believers, and well-wishers, I began to appreciate the experience again. And since that conference, the interest has continued to grow, and I've met literally thousands of wonderful people who believe in the Bigfoot Forest people and what Roger and I accomplished that day at Bluff Creek. Once again, that's coming from Bob. I didn't know that he attended this conference, and I have no idea who was there attending the conference with him. Don't say I authored the foreword to this book. Stop it. Knock it off. As a result of our filming Patty in October of 1967 over the past 50 years, many people have gone into the forest trying to find the Bigfoot Forest people. I've traveled all over the United States, and I've had the privilege of meeting many of these wonderful researchers. There are too many to name here. But one of many who stands out to me is Dr. Matthew Johnson. Some people call him Dr. J. All kidding aside, he's hard to miss because he stands 6'9" inches tall, 6 feet 9 inches tall. My gosh, he could be a Bigfoot Forest person. I've had the pleasure of hearing him present on 3 separate occasions at the Bigfoot Conference. He is passionate, animated, and has demonstrated a true and accurate understanding of who the Bigfoot Forest people truly are. Thank you, Bob Gimlin. I appreciate that, because you're the one that authored this, not me. You're the one that dictated it to Kevin Jones, and he ran it by you again for a double check. So I appreciate those compliments. Thank you, Bob Gimlin. On July 7th, 2016, I enjoyed eating breakfast with Dr. Johnson and Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones. On July 7th, 2016, Sherry's a restaurant. He met with Kevin Jones and Matt Johnson for breakfast. During our time together, Dr. J shared with me what happened up on the mountain in Soya during the previous month. He knew it. I told him everything. He even wrote it himself. I told him everything. What a monumental event it was, and I wish I had been there to experience it. I say this much: what Dr. Johnson shared with me made absolute sense and seemed to tie together many of the loose ends regarding the Bigfoot phenomenon. It most definitely fits my understanding of the Bigfoot Forest people. Matter of fact, when we were meeting for breakfast, Bob was blown away and started talking about all his views of the paranormal related to Bigfoot and what he heard from an older Indian woman in his tribe about the paranormal abilities of the Bigfoot, and how he's had some other unusual experiences. And again, he said, it most definitely fits my understanding of the Bigfoot Forest people. I'm proud to know that our filming of Patty in 1967 started the journey for so many people. I'm also pleased to have learned from Dr. Johnson that our film had a purpose. that the Bigfoot forest people had an agenda, and many of us helped to fulfill it. I want to encourage you to read Dr. Johnson's book with an open heart and open mind. Put away your preconceived notions, old schoolers, trolls, moles, and haters. Put away your preconceived notions and ideas and simply enjoy the journey. We all have a journey and can learn from one another. In his book, Dr. Johnson openly, honestly, and courageously shares his journey with you. I know you will enjoy the ride. I know that I have. So, what we have here is that trolls and moles and old schoolers and haters pressured Bob Gimlin to recant. We clearly have proof that Bob Gimlin dictated his foreword to Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones, U.S. Army retired. Kevin Jones drove 60 plus miles back to his home in the Tri-Cities, typed it up, drove 60 miles back to Bob Gimlin, let him review it, made some corrections, and Bob told Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones to please pass it on to me to meet my deadline. What you read in the foreword in my book, okay, Bigfoot, A 50-Year Journey Come Full Circle, foreword by Bob Gimlin. I wrote the book, right? Dr. Matthew A. Johnson is the author of the book, Bigfoot, A 50-Year Journey Come Full Circle, and Bob Gimlin is the author of the foreword, not Dr. Matthew Johnson. Okay? And there's no way I'd know all that personal stuff in his foreword that he included. So stop saying I wrote it. You're calling me a liar, and you're calling Kevin Jones a liar. That's not okay. Now, one of the other complaints that was made in those videos was he didn't know the content of the book, and clearly Kevin said in his letter that we just read through that he knew about the content, and then Bob Gimlin said in the book, we met for lunch at Jerry's July 7th, 2016, and I told him about everything that happened up on the mountain. So stop saying he didn't know what was going to be in the book. He knew, okay? Now, but because they were saying, well, I didn't know what was going to be in the book, so I probably shouldn't have endorsed it. Okay, oh, really? Okay, well, let's look at this puppy right here, The Quantum Bigfoot by Ron Morehead. Awesome book, by the way. I encourage all of you to buy this book and read through it. The Quantum Bigfoot by Ron Morehead. Now, let's open up this book, and oh, look, statement by Bob Gimlin. Okay? So he starts out in 1967, Roger Patterson, just like he did with my book. The author, the sound of the author is the same, but let's get down here where it says, since that time, he and I have met at many of these Bigfoot meetings and became good friends. Now, pay attention to this right here. I haven't read his new book, but I've always loved to hear his interesting speeches at these meets that we both go to. His ideas on what these beings might be are a little different than most. Just like me, just like Dr. Johnson, my views might be a little different than most, but then most folks haven't had the close-up encounters that he's had. And I might add, that I've had. Okay? He wishes him success and many more years of friendship. Okay? Let's get back here. I haven't read his new book, but I've always loved to hear his interesting speeches at these meets that we both go to. Same thing here. He didn't read my book, but somehow not reading my book ahead of time was a problem. But not reading Ron Morehead's book is not a problem. Do we see a little double standard here? A little hypocrisy going on here? He didn't read either one of these books, ladies and gentlemen, yet he penned forewords for both books. Okay? But it's not a problem for Ron's book, but it's a problem for my book. And then he says that he didn't know what was going to be in my book, but he said in the foreword that he penned, okay, that he knew. Kevin Jones wrote in his letter that he knew. So, there you have it. Those are the facts. Bob Gimlin penned the foreword to my book with the assistance of Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones, who went over 2 drafts with Bob Gimlin before submitting it to me. He knew about the content of my book, which we all read about up above, and he said as such here. But with his video with Russell Accord, he's denying it, which is not accurate at all. So those are the facts, ladies and gentlemen. And why did this all become an issue? In closing, why did all of this become an issue? Here's why all of this became an issue. The old schoolers, the trolls, the moles, the haters, they're scrambling in fear. Why are they scrambling in fear? Why did they put all kinds of pressure on Bob Gimlin to recant? And if you watch the first video, he said he was making the video because he was getting a lot of pressure from a lot of people. Listen to it. He says that. That's what created the problem. Not that Bob had a change of heart, but because of all the pressure he was getting from the old schoolers, the haters, the trolls, and the moles. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this book right here, Bigfoot, A 50-Year Journey Come Full Circle, forwarded by Bob Gimlin, they're scrambling because the truth that is contained in the pages of this book, that's why they're scrambling. Because it's blowing their little world apart. Their little box is going boom. Everything they were taught to believe in growing up is getting blown to smithereens, and they're afraid that all of you are going to flock to my group for the truth rather than their groups. And you know what? People are flocking to our group. 132 new just in the last couple days. We have grown by a couple thousand members in the past month. It's been crazy awesome. Now, I'm encouraged by all these people that want to know the truth, but the old schoolers, the trolls, the moles, they're not encouraged at all because they're losing you guys. Because you guys are jumping ship and coming over to Team Squatching USA to learn the truth. So keep on jumping. If you want to know the truth, watch the 4-part video series. Just go to youtube.com, type in Team Squatching USA, and watch the great reveal, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. Also get your hands on this book and learn what happened up there on the mountain that Bob Gimlin knew about ahead of time. And there you have it. That's why this is an issue. Not because Bob Gimlin truly had a change of heart. Not that he should have read my book first because he didn't know what was in it, because he did. He even said he did. He said we met and talked about it. Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Jones said we talked about it. And by the way, it wasn't important enough for him to read Ron Morehead's book before he penned something for him. So he even went as far as say he hadn't read his new book. Not an issue over here. Why is it an issue here? Especially since he knew what was going to be in the book. It's simple. It's simple, ladies and gentlemen. The old schoolers are scrambling. Because if you start believing people like Ron Morehead with the Quantum Bigfoot and Dr. Johnson, okay, if you start believing us, you're going to come to us for the truth, and you're going to stop paying for all the expeditions that these other people want to take you out on, and you're going to stop buying their books, and you're going to stop going to their conferences because they're promoting a Bigfoot that doesn't exist. Bigfoot is not a descendant of Gigantopithecus. That's a unicorn. So that's a waste of your time, waste of your money. They know that. They don't want you jumping ship. That's why this whole thing's an issue. And I never lied. I told you the truth. Lieutenant Kevin Jones is telling you the truth. Bob Gimlin told you the truth in the foreword he wrote for my book, which had way too much personal information for me to ever even author or pen anything like that. Give me a break. So there you have it. That's my one video. Now we can close this up. unless they desperately scramble to try to promote more lies, then I guess we're going to have to take it from there. But they owe me the courtesy of being able to respond. They had 2 videos. This is only 1 video. They owe me that opportunity. And if they're smart, they'll keep their mouths closed and move forward. Otherwise, I'll be back on this issue. This is Dr. Johnson signing off.